Hello everyone and welcome back to the Spanish Sling, a podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the Spanish and Singaporean companies and encourage economic relations between them. Since we are children, we have been daydreaming about space. But what are the real opportunities? How is the space sector in Singapore? And what are the opportunities for the Spanish space engineers? This is why today we welcome Marc Sans,
Thank you. Hello.
satellite operations engineer at Spire, who will give us an overview of the space sector in Singapore. So, Marc, can you describe a bit the space sector in Singapore and its main engines?
Yeah, of course. First of all, let's not forget, or let's consider that the space sector in Singapore is extremely small. In Singapore and everywhere, but especially in Singapore, extremely small. Maybe we only have like 1,500 people working in it, 2,000 people, maybe tops. And that's including sales representatives, marketing people, and all that. So engineers themselves are just a small portion of that. And Singapore, the good thing that Singapore has, similarly to most other countries that we consider within the developed countries, is that they have the distinction between traditional engineering, traditional space engineering, and the new space engineering. What do I mean by that? Traditional is what we know about NASA and these big agencies, right?
Yeah.
And Singapore is trying to develop that themselves. They have a small project linked to the Ministry of Defense, of course, it's space, that at the same time started from the university. So that's the main players that we have in Singapore are those. Government agency together with universities developing one big main project for one big main satellite doing one main task. And then Singapore always strives for innovation, tries to find new things.
Exactly.
So it's a place that embraces that, which means that we have a bunch of other tiny players, small startups that are trying to develop their own new ideas, and that actually makes it very interesting in Singapore because you get talent brought from many places around the globe to develop these new ideas. The government tries to help it. So yeah, in Singapore it's small but thriving and
Yes.
we are evolving.
Yes, such a vibrant ecosystem combining modern and the traditional that we may think engineers.
Exactly.
Engineers.
Yes.
But what are the trends that are occurring right now in Singapore regarding space?
Constellations.
Constellation?
Yes, constellations. As I was saying,
Wow.
Traditionally we've always been thinking about space as one main project, developing one main satellite for one purpose. That means putting a lot of money in one single project, all eggs in one basket, right? So space is evolving towards using small satellites where together as a constellation fulfill that purpose, that initial purpose. So all these small companies I was talking about earlier, all these small startups, the idea is to do something with a bunch of satellites. Let's say take images of the Earth or communications, whatever it is. But yeah, I would say main trending topic, Singapore and pretty much everywhere else, is constellations. How can we make space even cheaper and more accessible and don't need to rely on one single system?
Wow, so interesting. And what are the development objectives in Singapore for the medium and long term regarding space?
Yeah, so it's actually linked to these two things I just mentioned. Singapore, as a government, they don't really have a plan for space, but the same way that most countries don't have a plan for space.
Yeah.
But they strive for innovation. So they are very committed to bringing talent. And that's the main focus that Singapore has, not only in the space industry, but across the board, but especially here because they don't really have it. Space engineers, so they are trying to bring talent, develop this, help these startups develop, and maybe potentially build their own like space unicorn, if I can call it that way.
Yes. So, Marc, you have given us an overview of the space sector. I have talked about trends and objectives. But what are the main differences between the sector in Spain and in Singapore?
Okay. Main thing is Spain is in the EU, which means that it's part of the European Space Agency, which puts Spain as one contributor within a big collaboration network. Okay, big collaboration network, again, it's the European Union. With that is good and bad. Okay, that's good and bad in terms of Spain. It's good because it's involved in this collaboration network, and it's good because you are in touch with other countries that are developing stuff. At the same time, it's bad. Why is it bad? Because Spain does not have a tradition in being, let's say, cutting edge or developing all these new technologies or being involved in space exploration, which means that the opportunities, the real space opportunities in Spain are extremely limited, if any. Why am I saying that? Because Spain contributes, for example, to developing electronic components for satellites, or in that traditional approach to space that is the European Space Agency in general, small components or small parts in big projects are developed in Spain, like the Mars rover. There was few things developed in Spain, but again, it's always small subcomponents, small parts.
Yeah,
okay, which makes it interesting because you are in touch with 3 projects, but at the same time, you don't get to see the full project.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the good and bad thing in Spain. Whereas Singapore is a single player. It's a small country, pretty wealthy, trying to say, hey, I'm here, I'm in the middle of, let's put a pin on the map. And then Singapore develops everything end to end, entirely all the projects. Which means that if you are an engineer working in a Singaporean project, you get to see the whole picture, the whole thing, develop the whole thing. Maybe buy a few components here and there from Europe, but it makes it quite interesting. And there's all these, all the industry about bringing talent and innovation that I was just mentioning.
Yes. So regarding that, we have talked in Spain and Europe that there's a collaborative network. But is there in Singapore an international collaboration in terms that in research and development, international players come here in Singapore and make a change in space?
That's a very good point, I have to say, because in space collaboration, it's a yes and a no. Why is it a yes and a no? Space industry has always been, historically, it started as a hostile competition between the US and Russia, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So at that point, it was zero collaboration, absolutely zero collaboration between those 2 superpowers. But of course, it involves a lot of scientists. Okay, and scientists tend to collaborate, tend to try to bring together, share ideas, help each other. Which means that at one point space became like more and more collaborative, and the main proof that we have is that we have the International Space Station, which is absolutely collaboration between different countries. It's a main lab up there that it's all countries working together for R&D, for all of that. And we have stuff like the Hubble telescope that maybe you've heard about. So yeah, that's also another product of collaboration in the space industry. So yes, everything around space exploration is extremely collaborative. On the other hand, of course, always there's both sides. All countries involved there are extremely protective of their IPs, of their intellectual properties. Not only in projects that they develop themselves at the let's say government project type of level, but also very protective of every single piece of technology developed by any of the companies that are based in their countries. So every piece of technology developed within the borders is theirs. And sharing that is usually very tricky because space has always fallen into the defense category, which means very secret, very stringent. Yes.
Well, I guess that despite like the secrecy and the IP need to protect IP, I guess it must be so rewarding to work in a field that the whole world is collaborating. And making a team together.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting to see that the world is global right now. You
can see it there in space section.
That there's no more borders anymore, or that basically the moment you throw something up space, it's some it feels somehow a little bit like back in the day whenever people looked at the sea and there was nothing and it belonged to no one, to whoever got there first. So it's a bit that situation now.
Yes. And Mike, what are the future trends regarding space sector in Singapore?
Okay. The future, I was talking about constellations, right, earlier. So space is moving that direction, mainly. Now everyone is launching CubeSats. CubeSat is something small, cheap to manufacture. Cheap means, what does cheap mean? Cheap means 20 years ago, compared to now, maybe it was like 1-2 orders of magnitude more expensive than to produce a satellite and launch it than it is now. Yeah. That means 1 or 2 zeros in that big figure, right? In terms of launching a satellite. So now we're moving in that direction. We are starting to launch more and more satellites. What to do with them? No one knows. What do I mean? All projects that we are currently launching, Spire or any other any other company, yes, of course they have a purpose. But what I mean with that is, 10 years ago we didn't know what an app was on our phone, roughly. Okay, it's like, okay, it's something that I have on the screen and I just press, but what can I do with that? Not many things. And now we have an app for everything. So space is moving a bit in that direction, meaning there's endless possibilities that we can't even conceive right now with small tweaks and differences. So we'll see how we go, where we go in that sense. But we can't forget that there's one main thing that we need to take into account, and in space, and it's the problem with space debris. Yeah. So as I was saying, the amount of satellites in space is growing exponentially, and that plus debris plus everything else that we can have up there, we are trending towards building like a huge dome above us, where could develop into a huge problem. So space is blooming, space has a lot of options, but if we don't tackle that problem soon, it may be cut.
Wow. I hope it doesn't come to that. Well, thank you so much, Marc, for giving us this great overview of space, and now we know that sky's definitely not the limit.
It's not the limit, it's not the limit. Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.